Morning, everyone. Place looks like there's a bunch of stuff in front there because we did a Zoom the other day, and we left that as a platform for the computer and so forth. So mine want to move the chair anyways. So anyways, mine is here this morning. Lucien's running the show. We're going to do the Tai Chi Paradigm and 108. We're still going to be shut down to the end of the month, and then by the time we open the doors again, it'll probably be the first week of July. So hopefully, if you plan to come back, let us know if you're going to be coming back right in the end of or the beginning of July or the very, very, very end of June. That way we can plan our schedule. So today we're going to start off the warm-up as usual, and as we go through them, I'll give you some brief explanation as to why we do them. But most of it is to increase range of motion, increase some coordination, control the different components of our body, which is really our limbs. Our torso needs to be somewhat awakened because most of us don't move our body the way we could, or in other words, properly the way we should. And if you move your body, you're going to get better circulation, you're going to get better alignment of body if you work, gentle movement. And if you're doing it because you've been prescribed, the exercise would be great to be more aware of your movement and then ultimately build that coordination. If you're doing it for balance, we'll go through all these different exercises, and there's additional benefits for each one of those. So anyways, starting off with our feet shoulder width apart, hands like this or like this, and we're going to turn. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and stop. Okay, hands over like this. We stretch 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and stop. Okay, hands up. Reach down. 1, 2, 3. To your right. 2, 3. To your left. 2, 3. Center. Inhale, palms up. Exhale, palms down. Okay, hands up. Reach down. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Center. Inhale. Exhale. Hands up. Reach down. 1, 2, 3. To your right. 2, 3. To your left. 2, 3. Center. Inhale. Exhale. Okay, now hands on your waist. We're going to make circles. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2. Reverse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2. Cross. Knees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2. Reverse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. Center. Hands on your waist. Neck turning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. Center. Back and forth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, and stop. Tilt to the side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. Center, down, circular movements. 1, 2, 3, reverse. 1, 2, 3. Center, hands up, pull in, inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Okay, next we spread the feet. Turn the shoulders, relax the shoulders and the arms, let them swing around, wrap your body. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, and stop. Okay, now we'll do a little stretching. We turn to this direction and stretch out a little bit. 1, 2, 3. Switch. 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 1, 2, and stop. Okay, switch the other side again. Straighten the front knee. Fold from the hip. Stretch out the back of the leg. Switch. 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 Switch to center. Okay, shake it out. Okay, deep breathing. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Okay, so, those are the limbering up exercise. So most people that do stretching, just like people that jog or so forth, they think stretching is not really a warm-up. You have to actually move your body a bit. And then when you start to do a bit of stretching, which could be a whole routine, stretching is to increase range of motion and then Most of stretching is really a mental thing because the mind has to be involved to control the breath. So you should exhale in the stretch. And stretching is really is to increase the range of motion and to release the tension in the muscle groups. So you have lots of muscles in the body, whether it's the back of the legs or the front of the thighs or your calves. There's different positions that puts the muscle into a stretch. And the reason why we stretch is to avoid the conflict of tension. And the tension really resonates into the joints of your body. And if you have tension in the body that's not correct, you're going to have a body that's kind of either misaligned or you're going to have tension in the body that restricts movement. So we do a bit of that, and stretching is, because a lot of it's mental, you're really inhibiting what they call the stretch reflex. So when you go into a position and the muscle will feel like it's under resistance, it wants to resist or it responds. So that it responds by tensing. So you have to override that reflex by mentally letting go and then at the same time exhale into the stretch. And, stretching is something that it's a learned process. So you have to let your body release and release over time, and you'll increase that range of motion. One of the things that people don't like with the stretching is because it causes pain, or it hurts the stretch. But mainly that's because the muscle isn't releasing. And if you try to stretch through that non-release of the muscle, the chance of injury is high because the muscle will eventually, if you force it, could be torn gently or torn a bigger injury than you expect. So the next couple of days you might be really sore. But if you're stretching correctly, you shouldn't be sore, the next day, because I stretch all the time and I don't have discomfort from stretching. So if you're stretching and there's pain, you're probably not stretching right. Okay, here, hands on your waist, shoulder roll. So movement is really the best way to avoid tension in the body. If you have tension, it's just going to restrict. So this is circular movements, working your upper shoulder girdle right around this whole area. You're going to try to get it moving. And center. Okay. Next, press down, release, exhale, inhale, and breathe through your nose, tongue touching the roof of your mouth. And stop. Deep breathing. Hands up. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Okay, next we're going to make circles like this. Elbows and knees. They kind of fold and unfold. So the elbows and knees are building a relationship. So there's some coordination going on between the upper body and the lower body. And reverse. Okay, palms down. Lift the spine. Big circles. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and stop. Okay, shake it out. Hands up. Pull in, inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Okay, relax for a few seconds. So I know there's some musicians actually going to be tuning in next week, and they're going to be following some of these drills and exercises. And the main benefit, that we develop from doing these exercises to develop body intelligence. And body intelligence is just being mindful and conscious of your movement and control of your sort of voluntary muscles, because we have this whole body that we have to deal with. A lot of times we work with our hands and our hands and arms maybe work kind of independently of each other. But when we're building body intelligence, we want to build integration of body, not just up here, but also down here. So the only way to get that to happen is to actually work the whole body. So we build patterns and movements specifically to work the joints so that our joints will move effectively, but then naturally. That's really one of the end goals. So this body intelligence that you develop becomes functionality. So regardless of what you may understand about just seeing the movements, your end goal is actually to get your body to react and respond. So if we're talking about tension in the body and the ability to control that, it really becomes also an inhibitor of response. So if your body doesn't feel whatever you need to do with the motion, then your sensory system is not working correctly. So your body response won't be, as responsive and as agile as it could be. So this carries through with the whole body. While we're doing these movements, we kind of look at it as a hand movement, but your body actually is responding and compensating for the subtleties and the little transitions your body has to go through. Now, if your body's stiff, it doesn't really know. This would be just working it where your body is just totally stiff with a lot of excessiveness. So, that happens, say, for balance, also for control of that. So if you're doing this, say, for improved balance or improved mobility, especially if you're prescribed this and you're seeing you're having some trouble with tracking your balance, then this applies to you too. It applies to everybody that's doing things in a standing position. So if we put our hands on our hips and we move from side to side, that's actually moving our hips. So we move our hips and we sway from side to side. That's something that we kind of built some as flexibility in something like this, where you kind of build a range of motion bending to the side, because all of this, the bones in here, your skeleton, actually has to shift and move. Now, if your body's become pretty rigid over time because of non-motion or lack of movement in those directions, it's only going to want to do this. So while you're seeing the body do this, you're doing this with the hand. So you actually have to shift the whole body, and that just goes right back to the second exercise. So when we shift and we move, we have to learn to shift in a vertical direction. And then, as we've been doing this for a while in this class, when you shift your weight, you're finding your center. And you move gently over. That's so you can track where your body's going. Now, we call that weighting and unweighting. So if you're standing, whether you're practicing your balance or you're a musician, when you're standing and playing an instrument or you're doing something at home as a task, your body actually is shifting ever so slightly, because you're doing certain things, and if you're relaxed, it's going to go with the flow. But if you're tense, then it becomes pretty isolated. And a lot of times if your body's not healthy, if you have an injury, if you have something that's out of place, like a pinched nerve in your back or your neck or your spine, you notice that those areas don't want to move, and mainly they don't move because your proprioceptive sensory system is restricting you from moving because it knows that there's something going on. So pain sensors and so forth that are tied to all of our, the total system, when you shift and you move, you can't move as well because there's restrictions. So if you're an athlete and you're doing certain type of movements, and then you get injured or you have a slight pull or a torn muscle or something, your body doesn't allow you to do those movements. So everything in the spatial side of the movement gets compromised. So it doesn't come out as good as it should be. So you could be a gymnast doing a certain movement. If there's a slight injury, everything involved with that muscle is going to be compromised. So your execution is going to be not as good. So that's why when we're doing things, we have to understand why we're doing it and what the purpose of it and what the benefit is doing it. So our sensory system is really something that we want to heighten, to be aware of where the body is going and where it's moving. So these are things that we're really focusing on. So when we shift our weight and find that center, this is the time that you can find your balanced position, because you have to get your weight supported. And when it's supported, then you can move and lift and do different things. So here we're going to do the single-legged stance. So we move from leg to leg. That's what we're doing. It's just finding the position, letting our body respond, and go over and over. And holding the position over time is a combination of things. When you hold the position, it takes some stability and strength. Now, if you stack your skeletal structure in an alignment, that's actually the most effortless position to be in. Now, my leg is actually fairly straight in this position, and it's not bent like this. So you would say, well, my center of gravity is lower. Wouldn't I be more stable? That's true that it's more stable, but it's using additional muscles. Whereas if you're lifting like this, once you align your body and there's a balance in position, it takes a lot less strength. So when we kick or we do whatever movements that we're doing, there's the down position and then there's the up position. There's the down position and then there's the up position. On the up position, you're going to feel much lighter, much more aligned, and your balance in that position is going to be better. But then at the same time, when you execute, you need some flexibility and you need some strength. So that's what's happening when we're building through these fundamental exercises, some mind-body connection, where body starts to recognize different feelings and positions. So a lot of this will happen as part of the course. Now, if you go like this and then you start to do this, that's a response. That's not actually totally bad. Your body's reacting to that because it's gone to position and there's a little tension here, a little tension there, and your body is responding, trying to keep you balanced because that's your end goal. But then as you become more and more accustomed to the position, you're going to get a lot less of that jostling in your position. So if you're playing an instrument and your body goes into a tense thing, it might not actually work as well as you should. If you're doing a task and you're not in the right position and you do this, then that's going to mess up whatever you're trying to do. So you can see how your body does have this reactive type of tension, and some of it is good, some of it is not good if you're doing something that's very delicate. Okay, so that's what we're doing. We're shifting our weight back and forth and then finding our center. Okay, so that's those movements, and that's really for standing on one leg. Now, when we're here, we have to use the bodies. Now, all these things that we're doing, that last thing was a side to side. This is actually front to back. So what's front to back? Forward and back. So we have sometimes stepping forward movements, and then when we go back, we have this forward and backward relationship. Now, as a drill, we do this and this. So this is good for walking and moving and building that upper body and lower body coordination. But when we do it like this, it's building stability. And then when you're in the position, you're moving, your body has to compensate for that. So we have to keep the shoulders and the hips as relaxed as possible. So look at the relationship. Your shoulders and your hips are a relationship. Your shoulders and hips are joints that are similar. One's in the upper body, one's in the lower body. So that's what we're trying to develop, is that relationship between the way we move our hands and our legs, because that's a coordination and it's also a balance. So upper-lower coordination is tied to something like this, and we direct the movement to the center line. Okay. So when I go backwards, actually it's not tracking the center line directly behind me, because the position actually is slightly forming a triangle like this. Because if you do this, and I try to put this leg behind me, it's going to turn my body. So you actually don't do it so that it's point A to point B. Some positions are like that, but in this instance, because the body's turning, it's really more of a triangle. So when I do this, everything is aimed toward that line, because we have from here to here is a width, from here to there is a width. That combination of movements has to be realized so that you will stay tracked and balanced. What's behind us is behind us, so we're really focusing on that. Okay, now when we go like this, that's equal and opposite, compensating and counterbalancing. So that's the mechanism. Then we cross. So here I'm standing on this one leg and I'm kicking to the side. Now what keeps me stable is the action that's equal and opposite and balanced. So it's not one direction, or it's both. So this leg is like that in a, like a grandfather clock, and it's got that thing that's moving back and forth. Tick tock, the hands move. Has to be balanced, and it'll stay moving until it loses momentum, and then it just ends up stopping. Then you got to start it again. So that's how our arms should be moving. And it just goes like this. So once it's in motion, it should be pretty effortless to get going, because, or keep going, because you have gravity acting on the movement. Okay, shake it out. Deep breathing, hands up, pull in, inhale. Exhale. You see, we inhale, open up on our toes and down. Okay, inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Okay, shake it out. So those are the exercises that work on balance, the ones I did from side to side, and the leg swings and the leg lifts. So those are good for your balance. If you're working toward improving your balance, you might focus on those exercises, especially if you've been prescribed Tai Chi for balance. The form itself is something you build, but that's not exactly where all of the balancing is developed. The form develops a mapping in the brain, as well as builds understanding of posturing. And then it becomes ultimately moving meditation, but that's another part of the training. And the thing with Tai Chi is, it's not just a bunch of movements randomly done. It's really a training of consciousness and intent. So movements have an idea of what the purpose is of that movement. So that's really what differentiates Tai Chi Paradigm, and dancing and so forth, because the mindfulness and the intent of our movement is really something that develops a deeper understanding of functionality and why our body moves this certain way. So that's something that's different from other types of forms of exercises. So when we're here, the next thing we're going to do is silk reeling exercise. So silk reeling is another concept that we have, and what that is building the continuity of movement. And while we're building continuity of movement, you're building still more and more of that sensory and response system. So when we're here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we reset to 5. Now the width of the stance, depending on how low you go, it doesn't have to be that big. Actually, you just go like this. As long as you're taking the weight from one side to the other, going, say 50-50 is the balance point, but between shifting forward and back, we avoid the 50-50. So that's training to avoid double weightedness, which is a term we use in Tai Chi a lot, that really is a fault. Being 50-50 really is a position, that's sustained for a very short amount of time, because if we're in motion, 50-50 makes you unstable. So when we shift, you get to a point, 50-50 would be here. Actually, at this point, you wouldn't be able to move either one of the legs. If I shift here, once I pass the 50-50, actually, I can actually move that back leg. If I shift back and I avoid the 50-50, I can actually shift this leg. Now, the shift forward and back really is transferring weight, but then when can you actually make the full transition with the opposite leg? In other words, if I get to here, I could be here. But then I can't really take a step until all of my weight ends up here. And then I can take that step. Now, if I step back, the same thing happens. When I get to here, I'm not double weighted approaching, but I can move this foot. I can maneuver this foot. So while we're doing this drill, we're looking at the upper body motion. You're really developing a total body movement where the body eventually can reach a point where it had to get to this point. And then to shift, this is when you drag the foot back, and this is when you step out. Because that's where you're starting to measure and gauge how much weight you have on one leg and how much weight you need to make a step through or a transition. Now we'll go to the other side. Now you notice when I did that turn, my weight was here. I didn't turn when I was in the forward position. In fact, if I'm in the forward position and I want to turn that way because I have weight here, I have to turn this foot. And then I have to do it like this. But we don't do it that way. We sit back to here, and then I turn this foot. And that takes me into the opposite direction. And that's what you actually would do in a 180-degree turn, or maybe even a 45 to 45 turn. So, everything that you're doing with something is not always obvious that, I'm working the silk reeling hand movement. Well, it's really the silk reeling is total body movement. And I go forward, and I turn, and I sit back, and I turn those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One of the reasons why I bring up some of these ideas is because when you're copying and mimicking the movement, you don't think about this. And if you don't think about it, you're not actually being mindful and understanding what you're actually doing. I mean, that's really my role, in a sense, to give you something to think about and something to evaluate as what the purpose is and what the benefit is. So the benefit really is something that evolves over time as you begin to understand more and more about the body mechanics. And we're down here, both hands like this, and we turn 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's a sequence of events, sequencing through the movement, and actually everything that we do sequentially will build the coordination based on the phase of the movement. All right. So now we're here. Cross the forearms, okay, cross hand position, adjust the feet. You have a forward position. Most of the weight is on the back leg, but not 100%. And when would you have 100% on the back leg is when you're going to actually lift this one, then it becomes 100%. So that happens if you were to kick. Or it happens, really, if you were to step backwards. So that's when you actually would carry your total load of the body weight. Okay, this is called opening and closing. Now we're going to switch to the other side and build the other side, balance the movement. So we have this hand forward and this leg forward. So because this is mirror image, this is my left side and this is your right side. But without even looking at what is right or left, just know that the front hand and the front leg are in the front. And you're going to actually open and close based on that look. It has to look like this. So based on the look, because when we are mimicking the movement, that's all you're doing is trying to copy the way the movements look. Okay, so this is going to vary based on perception. We see the hands, but do we see the body? We see the body, but do we see the legs? You see the legs, but do you see the timing? So all these things are something that has to be eventually observed and then focused on. Now I'm going to face the mirror this time, and I'm going to do the parallel stance. The hands go up like that. So this is called preparation. When we're doing the form, this is what you see, because you're working from behind. So hopefully today, Saturday morning, normally this is our biggest Tai Chi morning day, and hopefully a lot of you have been following the morning Saturday class. Okay, rounding out. So this is standing meditation, or just sometimes called pile training. You're just standing in a vertical position, no footwork, just hand positioning and body positioning. Feet shoulder width. Relax the chest, round out the arms. This is called the lower hoop. The bottom of the hoop is about where your navel is, meaning that level. Okay. Now we go up to shoulder height. Elbows are relaxed, shoulders are down. So if you're like this, okay, let the shoulders go. So you see everything should settle and drop down. Okay, so there's a little bit of tension in the body. How much? Over time, your body will figure that out. If your shoulder's getting tired, it's too much. Okay, that's two positions. Knees are slightly bent. Now we're going to drop the elbows. Okay, now we're holding this small ball in the palms of our hand. Knees are still slightly bent. Now the elbows are dropped and they're pulled in slightly to form that configuration. You see that? So you look at the image. Okay, you hold it, clear your thoughts, breathe through your nose, tongue touching the roof of your mouth. Then the elbows start to drop. Okay, you're going to turn the palms like this until you straighten the elbows and lift your spine. Okay, now when you lift your spine, don't tilt the head. That's something that should be kept slightly down with the chin a little bit tucked in, so this area of your neck relaxes, okay? So that'll take some tension out of the nape of your neck. and then press down and straighten the knees, but don't lock the legs so you feel stiff. But they should straighten and extend. Okay? So, when you're standing in a position like this, one of the terms, shake it out? Okay. So when you're standing in a position like this, okay, this is to give you an idea. Double weighted is 50-50. So with double weighted position, your soles of your feet are actually responding and your toes are kind of doing this whether you know it or not, okay? Now, if I go to a toe-heel position or toe-toe position, you're going to feel like your body wants to fall forward. If I bring my weight to the heels, heel position, your body feels like it's going to go backwards. So in a position like this, when you reach the stage of that control, then between the ball of your foot and the heel of your foot, if you alternate the feeling of that relationship. So let's do that. Let's go to the ball of the foot and the heel of the foot. It doesn't matter which one. Feel which way you're going to fall. You can. So that slight manipulation is what ends up happening when we're standing in a position and you kind of lift the ball of the foot and then alternate your feet. Your sensitivity will be heightened and aware because you actually will be staying in that ball, heel, toe-heel relationship. So that happens even in this shoulder width stance. That's one way of avoiding double weightedness. So that's probably something that a lot of people don't understand or probably even not even told that. But actually, that happens in every footwork that you do. You have this toe-heel relationship. In other words, if you're sitting like this, I have my heel down. When you sit down like this and the knee bends, you're going to feel pressure on the ball of your foot and the heel of this foot. And then when you go forward and it goes to the heel of the back foot, the ball of the front foot, that has to be a relationship that happens throughout all of your stepping and your transitions and your body work when you're moving. Now, when you're standing on one leg, even though you're on one leg, it's toe-heel relationship, and between there and there, there's that manipulation of that. So your body has to be somewhat nimble and relaxed for that to happen. So that's really a heightened sensitivity. Whereas if you go into a position and you're just stiff and rigid, then you really can't detect that. But you're not going to tip over simply because your body is going to be in a state of static rigidness, and you're just going to be down. So when you sink down, double weighted is, so when you're sitting, it's between the toes and the heel of your feet. And that little bit of minute transition or transfer happens simultaneously. That's part of this response that I'm talking about. So that question is actually a pretty deep question. But say in single whip position and we go from toe to heel, that's really what allows us to transition from one position to the next. So for those of you who have been in this position and we shift and we pivot, if you bring your level of consciousness down to the sole of your feet, then you're going to actually realize that that's what's happening. If you're doing this and this, that is an alternating effect that will happen too. So for the people that have been studying a while and doing this, that heightened level of sensitivity and awareness has to go all the way down to the soles of your feet. Now, if I mentioned that day one, you wouldn't even actually know what I'm talking about. But the thing is, if you have a question like that, then I'll answer that and bring that level of consciousness and mindfulness down to where it's supposed to be as an idea. And then you kind of work through that. And then when you go from the bottom of your feet to the top of your head, which is something I mentioned when we're doing this. So with that explanation, take that concept into everything that you're doing, and that actually will help you improve tremendously on your leg work and your avoidance of double weightedness. So I don't know, hopefully that answered that question. Okay, so we just finished those 5 positions. So we have this one and we have this one. So, regardless, because we're not really moving, this is holding a position, you can still mindfully connect to how the body is going to be working. Because there isn't a lot of movement, the idea of balancing and responding is going to be much more limited. So it's totally about that standing position. But as a training for newer people, standing there in those 5 different positions, 1, 2, 3, with the knees slightly bent, and 1 and 2 with the erect position, will help you develop this body alignment and the understanding of those 5 different positions. So what is that? That's building muscle memory. When we're doing a standing posture, that's just a sample of what muscle memory training is. And that's what happens when you go through the form, but you can't go through the form and develop muscle memory without memorizing the muscular position or your skeletal position. So if I get into an empty stance like this and I hold this position, now that actually is actually any one of your positions can be held over time to let you identify with what that feels like. So then you have a position here, a position here, a position here. All of these are minute positions that some of them look like gross positions where you have a vertical and horizontal. Those are the combinations of the geometry of positions that I talk about. Now, if you build this concept into your body, the intelligence that you're building from the skeletal structure positions, which is really muscle memory. Everyone uses the term muscle memory, and do you understand really what that is? Muscle memory is formulating the proprioceptive conditioning of that position so that the muscle forms the skeletal position, which is really a joint angle position. So there's no mystical thing going on when we talk about muscle memory because of the joint angle position. As soon as I bring in a geometry of position, you're working with joint angle position. And that leads you into muscle memory, and that all translates into better transitions. Transitions will evolve forever based on the individual's coordination. Some of us can pick it up better than others. Some of us will pick up different areas of the body than others. So we're not all the same, so we're all going to evolve slightly different. But the goal in, say, sequential form, the sequence is the same, the transitions will look different. The form itself, the postures are the same, but the idea of the position will vary based on an individual's ability to find those positions comfortably and naturally. So that's why it's challenging for a lot of people in the beginning until you start to build and formulate these positions in the body. And there's a probably infinite amount of positions that happen because we're dealing with lots of little bones, lots of joints, lots of positions that vary as you go through it. And transitionally, if you take just the Tai Chi Paradigm form, 37 postures, and you run through that concept, you can imagine how many manipulations you have. You couldn't count or calculate how much is going on simply because this amazing organ up here actually figures it all out for you. So you don't have to overthink it. But you have to at least understand what you're taking in so that you have something for the mind to work with. And then when you physically, mentally think too much about it, then it actually will inhibit your body's response. Okay. All right, let's do a few deep breaths again. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. So let's get the hands together, find that triangle. So now that we're talking about triangles, there's a geometry of position, more transitions. So these are the basics. Although they seem so simple, this is how we learn best. Simpler the better on each area of your body until the 2 sections, upper and lower, start to identify. And then it'll make a natural connection. Okay, thumbs up, palms together. Let's alternate the shoulders. Actually, although these are pretty simple, this is really sort of your first line of building a relationship on the 2 sides of the body. Why? Because my hands are connected. They're touching, and they're forming up and down on each side. One can drive the movement, the other side can go with it. Doesn't really matter which side is the dominant side, and there is going to be always a dominant side because one is active, one is passive. So when you're moving, that that in itself can be something that has to be understood and explained. Um, so as we evolve, these questions will show up, and we have to kind of learn to understand that. So this is that relationship. Now I just want you to sample this for a second, right? Let's break the hands apart. Now when we move, you don't feel that connection any longer. So that's what happens when you're building relationships in the movements where the right and left are really tied together. So even with grasp the sparrow's tail, when we press and we pull back and we turn and we push, it's okay to touch. We have another system that's the tactile sensations and feeling. You know how much pressure, how light, how heavy. All of this becomes part of what we're building towards sensitivity of movement. So when we touch, you say, is that the way to do it? It's fine to touch because it's called press. And we follow, the hands will actually move independently but yet together. So that's really that relationship we're building. Okay, now we're going to go from here, turn, draw the bow. So when I draw the bow, I turn, I separate the hands, but then I come back to center, and you spread, and you go to center, and you spread. So that's actually, when they talk about yin and yang, the balance, really that whole concept is built inside our movements, it's built inside our body. Everything works like that. Everything works in that balance. It's like, just think of the two opposing forces, or going to the right or to the left. Okay, so if you think of this, shake it out. If you think of a switch, it goes on and off, goes on and off. So that's what your brain is doing when you program movements in your body. It turns switches on and off, and those switches are your synapses, or the firing of those. So if you have a wire and you shut the switch off, there's no message. If you turn the light on or you turn the switch on, there's a signal. So your brain is doing that. It has billions of these switches, and it's turning them on and off and programming those movements to happen at a certain time. In fact, computers and all that stuff work off the same idea. So yin and yang is kind of that binary system working off your system in the brain. So if those switches are not firing correctly, then you're not going to get the correct movement. So you can imagine how complex a movement is when we're trying to do something like this. So all we can do in the beginning is mimic the movement and copy it, because the brain has this capacity to mirror the movement. And watching and learning through that experience is what ends up happening. And for people that have some of this ability already, we all have the mirroring ability. The ability to copy exactly really varies among individuals. So, if you're a musician, you have to watch great performers and musicians. And then you pick up the body mechanics, the imagery. You can tell when someone's really involved with that movement and how emotionally they're tied to that. So when we do Tai Chi, we have that same expression. How you pick up on the idea and how you move really is through a visual assimilation, a visual connection. So that's why watching is so important. And that's one of the things that I do when I teach, is that I do it with you. I do it with you so that you could see at least what you're trying to do. Whether my movement is perfect or exactly, it's a better model than probably someone that's not doing it absolutely wrong. So it's just a guideline from the visuals. And hopefully as you evolve, I will evolve, and you can constantly capture an image that actually is going to be stored here, that actually is a good representation of what you're trying to achieve. So while, teachers are very important, if you're learning, you should watch the best imagery you can, because bad imagery is going to produce bad habits. So that's something to understand. So pick and choose what you think you should be watching the best to your level, to your understanding. Okay, spread your feet, fan through the back. Okay, center. You're going to lift the hand. Lift the hand. And then down. So this is just separating and trying to align this line that goes from here to here. And then it goes up and here to here. Now this is where you don't connect, you're not touching, so you do that separation. It's really the idea of connecting the two hands, but you have to be conscious of that feeling of what it feels like to be here, to be here. So that's really what happens with posturing. All right, deep breathing. So the last few weeks, I really worked a lot on the sequence and the form for, you know, working with the sequence and the form for a lot of people that were learning the form. So kind of go back to those videos and work on those sections um, and just build your way through it. I think, we have enough time to do the form once for the people that have been doing it, and then we're going to go to the 108 movement. But for the exercise, I wanted to focus on a bit of explanation so you can, um, kind of connect with that and then understand why it's important to do those. Okay, let's go through the form. We'll start with our feet parallel. On Monday or Tuesday, I'll work more again from the beginning of the form. So we have brush knee 4 times. Okay, so that's the Tai Chi Paradigm form, deep breathing. So from here we move on to the 108 movement form. But just think of, uh, as musicians, if you're following this, music is to the ears where movement is to the eyes. So what you capture is the essence of what you think you're listening to, or in visuals, what you think you're capturing in the through the eyes as far as movement. So all of that is developed through training. The more you do it, the more you see it, the more you hear it, the better you get. But the important thing is that you have to know what you're looking for and what you're listening to. So, these are part of our learning mechanisms, and it's also part of, our system. So we have to learn to adapt both. And, the audio transition or the audio translation that, you get as feedback is really just information, and you have to interpret it. So that's why when we practice something like this, it's good to listen and follow and listen and follow and do it regularly. So anyone that's doing the 108 movement form now, um, will go through more of the same process. We've gone through the form, we've gone through the kicks and so forth. At this stage, once you've learned the sequence, you go to the next stage of building integration, the things that we're talking about, avoiding double weightedness, keeping the vertical spine, integration of body, passive and active movement. These are all ideas that we have in the form, based on the principle that we talked about with yin and yang. Yin and yang covers pretty much all of the ideas of balance. Balancing, saying, um, weighting and unweighting. There's that they call it differentiating between the solid and the empty. So when we're in a position, we shift our weight from one side to the other. That's differentiating between what is solid and empty, between the toe and the heel and the relationship. That all translates and carries through all the way from the soles of your feet to your hip. And then on the hands, it translates as movements from the wrist, the elbow, and the shoulder. And then when that relationship gets tied together, it becomes that relationship of balance and cross-referencing, like when we swing our legs or like when we lift our body. These are all positions that over time start to make sense, because innately inside those movements has this characteristic of balance and motion. And this is something that's not very understood in the body. And in fact, it's, before you can even understand the body, you have to have at least conceptually something up in here that leads your brain to direct the body. So if it doesn't understand it here, the body is going to have a little bit of trouble picking up on what it's being told, because all the body's doing is a reflection of what images you took into the eyes. So that's why the learning process and the learning curve is steep in the beginning, and then once you get to a certain level, there's a constant up and down throughout your practice, because your brain is trying to decipher things and your body's trying to pick it up. So what does it know to do? It knows as much as you tell it to do. That's really essentially that. So the level of understanding is what will cause the variance in the body form. But ultimately, when you do your forms, final positions are the most important thing. Why? Because final positions is part of that muscle memory. So if you don't complete the movement in its final position and have the adjustment so it forms the look, the alignment, the position, then your posture is going to be compromised. Now, that's your target position. And if you have a target position, how do you get from one position to the next? That stringing together the postures from one to the next becomes that transition. That transition will evolve and be different from individual to individual based on that same thing that I talked about in the last class, is what it's interpreting, what it's picking up, what's its, so that's all part of the mental imagery and part of the mental understanding. So when we speak of mind-body connection and consciousness of movement and all of that, it's a great term, but how do you use it? That's really, some of the questions that has to be answered. So mindfulness of movement. That means pay attention as the simplest concept. Pay attention to what you're doing, and then consciousness. Be aware that things are happening, and let that feedback become a response back and forth from the body to the brain to the body. That level of consciousness really takes you, to the phases of understanding. So sustaining a position. Sustaining, we talk about, sustain the position. So what is sustaining? That means you're holding a position and you're conscious that something's going on here. So your consciousness of the leg and then the consciousness of the hand position, they're actually two different consciousness, because when we're thinking of the legs, we really can't pay attention to the hands. When we're thinking of the hands, we can't really pay attention to the legs. So what ends up happening is this position and this position have to be entered into your subconscious behavior. So when you get into a position like this, and this already knows that that's the correct position from that experience that we're talking about as consciousness of position and movement, then when we're here, then it knows here, then we can focus on this. Now when that's there and that's there, then the body form will be correct, and then that's the final position, and you move from there. So the cycling and the sequence of and the timing of what has to go first and then what has to go second and third and fourth becomes, this sequential event. And as we manipulate our skeletal structure, as I call it, sink the elbow, relax the shoulder, go up, form the triangle, form the hoop, those are manipulations of skeletal structure. Because when you go from vertical to horizontal, that's just two positions that we talk about. But the variation of this to this varies tremendously. Because if I'm here, if I sink the elbow, I turn my elbow like this, like this, like this, like this. There's increments of positions or phases within that movement. When I'm here, I sink my elbow and my hand turns like this. There's an increment of a position. When this side and this side has to connect, and then I turn, where does these movements connect and disconnect? That's sort of the understanding that the body has to build. Now, if I'm here and I say sustain the position, well, you're sustaining it here, but you're not just sustaining it, you're holding a position and then maneuvering through. Because while my hands are doing this, once I sustain this position, then the body moves. Once I sustain the position here, then the body moves, and then it moves, and then it moves. So there's always action and inaction. So the inaction is the position appears to be where you're sustaining that position. And the action becomes the consciousness that goes to another space in the body. For instance, if we do this and I hold, so this is sustaining it. Then when I turn, what created the next movement is the fact that I turned my body and I pivoted on the foot. Now when I get to this position, I'm sustaining my legs and sustaining the hand, but then I'm standing here, but I'm relaxing my shoulders and elbows. When I move to this position, I'm sustaining here, but then this becomes a movement. When I sink here, I'm sustaining in the soles of the foot, but now I drop here. And then we talk about the double weightedness and so forth as you move across, I'm sustaining here. Then when that turns and the body resets and adjusts, how much goes on in just a simple posture like that is, so much you probably can't imagine what's going on. So you have to do it. You do it, by doing it, your experience is going to change, but it gets slowed down to a snail's pace, which is why Tai Chi looks like it's going so slowly. But when does the body pick up on all of that information? It's time. Time, effort, and the mindfulness of this action is how your body evolves. That's why it does take a long time, but is there a benefit to that? Every one of these little things that I'm talking about takes a level of consciousness in the brain and what it has to do to alter what it thought it was supposed to be. So that's really reconnecting and reprogramming your brain for those specific things in that, say a file of movements. When it's reprogramming that, that's a level of consciousness and a level of building brain plasticity. Now, we think of brain plasticity as just like it's building, it's changing. Well, you have to have a mechanism to make your brain change. It doesn't change just simply because it wants to change. If you're feeding this information, that's why if you don't use it, you lose it. If you use your brain in this way and you use your movements and your body in this way, the evolution will continue, and it's an infinite amount of information that you could feed it simply by doing these movements. And that's really how deep something like this can go. A lot of people don't understand this because they never experienced it. I understand this because I've spent decades and decades and decades of realizing how this is happening, um, you know, metaphysically in the body, in the brain. Everything is just happening because of a course of this, um, journey. So you go through this. I mean, what is, the purpose of all of this? If you can learn and memorize it, and then you stop and you know it, then you have experienced one aspect of Tai Chi. You've learned the form, and that's not the total experience. You go visit someplace, you see it once, and you feel that that's as much as I want from it. But then if you like the culture and you start to evaluate the culture and you start to go deeper into what that culture is, how it started and so forth, and build off of that, develops a deeper understanding of that specific thing. So when we're dealing with movement and we're dealing with understanding why this kind of exercise is different from another kind of exercise, it's this. It's taking your level of consciousness to a whole different level. And is that any benefit to that? It's a tremendous benefit, because as humans, that's what we do. That's what part of life is to learn how to progress and evolve. So you reach a certain stage in your life, you reach maybe retirement. Where does that journey go after work? But with the human body and the mindfulness of what we're trying to attain, to have a quality of life in the future, then you need to constantly reinforce that and build that. And it starts up here, and it translates into here. But you still have to be connected and motivated to do that. But, motivation is a tough thing to stimulate unless you understand why. If you understand why and how and what, then you actually will start to eventually want to do this more often. And it's really self-cultivation, and it's up to you to do it. It's a prescription that you can serve yourself. We did a Zoom yesterday, so it was a nice term that Lucienne had coined. It's a gift to yourself. If you can give that gift to yourself every single day, you're going to benefit from it. But and it doesn't cost a lot. What it costs you is your own time. And most people will say, I don't have time. Well, when you start to lose it, then you really realize how much time is limited. So really, it's good to start at any time and then build off of that. I think for age-related degeneration, starts around 45, 40 years old. Okay, let's go through the form, sequence. Ready? Preparation. This is grasp the sparrow's tail. A lot of you from the Tai Chi recognize all these movements now. It's really visual recognition. The more you see it, the more you begin to recognize. It happens as a course of learning. What ends up happening is, as you go through the form over and over again, what ends up happening is the comfort level. Your comfort level changes. So what happens when your comfort level changes? You relax. You feel more comfortable. You feel more confident. And you start to build. Strum the lute, close the door, form the fist, and punch. Divert, block, and punch. So we sit back and we go out and we go in and we go out. Forward and back, right, left, center, forward and back, down, sit, turn. So we just talked a little bit about the consciousness of your position and what has to happen, sustaining a position. So you can see throughout the form, that's what it is. Sustaining and movement, that's passive and active, movement and inaction. That's the balance between everything that we're doing. So if you can understand that concept, then let your body start to, pick up on that strategy over time. I can't say that it's going to happen immediately, but at least you're aware of it. Step up and raise the hand. So this piece actually is repeated. So we see that we start to recognize, we start to see that there's common movements, and then it gets easier. So you're going to go through this, and then you're going to say, oh, that's what he meant, that's what he meant, that's what. So that really is making that connection. Okay, then we step up. So that would have been going in the paradigm, but here it continues on this side till we get to a single whip again. And here's the cloud hands. Okay, let's cap it off, and then we're going to go to the kicks. And we have what we call high pat the horse. And here's your front instep kick, which is the toe. And then the second instep kick. And the third kick is the heel kick on the left side, heel kick. And we have brush knee, right side push. Then we have the left side push as we step up. So stepping up is called advancing. And advancing, stepping up. Planting punch. Turn. Parry and punch. It's the same back fist. Set up again. High pat the horse. And we're going to switch to the corner, and we're going to do a beat the tiger step. And we turn. As I mentioned before, this looks like Jade Lady work shuttle. So the arm position is similar. Here we make the fist. That's beat the tiger. Cross, level, heel kick right, 2 punches to the air. Then we're going to do the pedaling step after we do the first parting leg on the left side. Then we shift, cross over, spin, 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 toe, heel, fold the arms, elbows up, knees up, parting leg, stroke down. Here's the parry and punch again. Then we form the fist and repeat, punch, divert, block, and punch. Okay, then we do this, carry tiger to the mountain, and we're going to repeat the obliques. And this is a 180-degree turn, brush, knee, and push. That was left side, grasp the sparrow's tail. Notice grasp the sparrow's tail in this form always happens either in this corner or in this side. Then we're going to turn all the way back to the front to do single whip, hold the ball, and then we're going to flip it over and reverse the ball. There's a right side diagonal flying, and then we turn and do 5 part the horse's manes. There's 1, 2, and 3. Step up. Here's your third one. And then we're going to sit back, twist step, and step up. Stroke down and up. One more time. And I mentioned in the other classes that Jade Lady works shuttle, part the horse's mane. They lead and follow each other. So postures even connect, in a certain format. So this is Jade Lady work shuttle. And here's part the horse's mane again. So you see how you can begin with one, go into the other one, begin with one, go into the other one. So you see the part the horse's mane and Jade Lady work shuttle have this close relationship as far as how they'll link together. And then this is capped off here by grasp the sparrow's tail, because that's the lead into single whip. And then cloud hands follow single whip. So you see, cloud hands a single whip, Jade Lady, and part the horse's mane. Fan through the back and parry and punch. That's happens together. And then insert needle and fan through the back. Hook your wrists, and we're here. Next we have the downward posture. Snake sticks out tongue. And then we lift and pull down, step up, cross the wrists, cross by touching, separate, press down, kick and thrust, separate, go to neutral, set it up, and repulse the monkey. Okay, next we do the carry tiger to the mountain again, and we open the stance. This is a footwork, even though it looks like it's a kick. It's really stepping out. And we shift, and forward. Raise the hand, bend from the waist, stalk, flaps, wings. And then we turn again. This is a repeat. We've done this section before. And then fan to the back. Turn, stroke down, parry and punch, and step up. form the fist and step up. Punch. Divert, block, and punch. It's a repeat. And then we advance forward again, grasp the sparrow's tail. Hook your wrists. Third set of cloud hands. Okay, we're going to go to the closing pieces as we approach the last section of the form. And single whip again. Now we have palm strikes face. Flip the hands over, and then palm strikes face, left side. Now we're here, single lotus kick, brush knee, left side push, forward twist, planting punch, or actually punch down to crotch. It's similar. Grasp the sparrow's tail again. And we're back to single whip. And we're going to do the second downward posture. Okay, here's your second downward posture. Go to neutral. Press down, snake sticks out tongue. Turn the hand up. Bring this hand here. Now we're turning, and then turning again, and then pull down. Go up, cross the wrists, and then press with the back hand. So this is actually cross hand position. And then we withdraw, retreat, hook the wrists, and step up to ride the tiger. So this is your posture. This hand comes down. This hand comes forward. The palm strikes face. And then we turn, switch the palms to the right side, lift the knee up, sit down, bring the hands here, take it behind you to the rear corner, come over the top, and Jade Lady, this is beat the tiger, draw bow to shoot tiger, actually. And then this goes up, and then palm strikes face, and you turn one more time. And then we're going to sit back, turn, bring the hand to the inside. This is back fist, left palm strikes face, high pat the horse just like in the kicks. Continue through neutral positions to grasp the sparrow's tail. So nothing really extremely different from what we've learned all throughout the process. Here we are again, hold and reverse the ball. So this is the second time doing this, and then this. So you see the form has a bit of redundancy and is really cycling through. So it's a sequence. The sequence, sometimes classified as active meditation, so going through the form, and you can imagine 15 to 17 minutes of constant movement going through it. So you, in the beginning, thinking through it, and then go through it with less thinking, and later on, getting through it without actually thinking, it becomes an active form of meditation. So to do something that long over that period of time, without actually thinking through it, you can imagine what benefit there is to learning things that really enter subconscious behavior. So that's really what happens. Now, when we learn things like that, it just happens as a course of the practice. But those are the kind of things that happen in life where you learn to do it and then take it for granted that you know how to do it, and then you really don't understand how you've learned it. But when you go through this, you actually will understand and learn the process. The process, as mundane as it is, and as different as it is to learning anything outside of these kind of movements, there's a tremendous benefit, as I would say. And this is something that evolves. You don't see it happening, but in a way you will see it happening, because when your form improves and your understanding improves, your execution improves. That's all a part of what has happened over this period of time when you start to evolve. And that goes from this to this. All of that starts to change, whether you know it or not. And that's really part of that understanding. So actually, we're about out of time. So, if you're following us on either Facebook or logging in, through the Academy website or going to Vimeo, um, what we found is in order to build a following on YouTube, it's actually the best format for us to be noticed and recognized. So if you have friends or or you've been going in through the Facebook, actually go to YouTube. Actually, that's a better form for us to give us the thumbs up and subscribe. There's a tremendous benefit for us as someone that's streaming because a lot of this content that I'm doing is really to reach out to a larger audience. If we can reach a larger audience with the thumbs up and to subscribe, it gives us the opportunity to continue to do this continuously so you can benefit from it. So there has to be a way for us to be recognized, and that's through YouTube. That's really the biggest platform that we can use. So try to do that. Go to YouTube, go to calvinchin.com or CCMA, and then thumbs up, subscribe, and ultimately that's going to help us so much. Okay, I'll see you next time, and I hope you enjoyed today's videos.